Omelete. Que beleza, galera! Olha aí, estamos de volta aqui em Palco Omelete para a gente fazer agora o Rabiscando. Olha só, Rabiscando é um momento especial aqui da nossa live que a gente recebe os nossos convidados e ao mesmo tempo temos arte ao vivo. Temos uma câmera para mostrar aqui, ó. A gente recebeu aqui no palco o Edu Souza para fazer aqui um desenho ao vivaço com a galera aqui, para a gente receber os nossos convidados também. E temos aí um processo artístico, enquanto as coisas estão rolando. E do meu lado aqui é o Léo.
Estou muito animado para conversar com a galera aqui.
Tá animado?
Estou muito. Especial, alguma galera, um pessoal aqui que vai estar... Não sei se vocês viram quem é, mas vai ter lenda aqui hoje.
Edu, você tinha feito um desenho. Que desenho é esse que você já fez?
Funcionando?
Opa,
tudo bom, galera? Bem, esse é o desenho do ovinho, que representa a omelete. E nós temos um adereço da capa, que é uma parceria da Omelete com o Bis, né? A CCXP com o chocolate Bis. E aí hoje, como a temática é X-Men, então aí esse desenho, no caso, vai ser executado por 4 artistas. Hoje vai ser eu que vou fazer com a temática X-Men. Aí os outros dias vão vir outros artistas. E aí vai completar essa Jump Piece, né, que fala.
Massa, o Edu já deu um spoiler legal aqui, ó. Vocês estão...
Era pra dar,
tá baixo o som? O pessoal aqui na frente tá comentando que tá baixo o som aqui para eles, ó. Vamos dar uma subidinha aqui.
Ô, gente, desculpa, não sei se...
Não, pô, o spoiler é bem-vindo, porque o spoiler é uma grande empolgação. Tem a galera aqui com uniforme, olha só que beleza, hein? Isso aí é inspirado no Grant Morrison, né? Essa fase aí, né? Aliás, incrível, velho. Pô, os melhores gibis. Maravilhoso, o óculos, o cabelo... Nossa, você tá igualzinho, velho. Ó, o Edu já deu um meio spoiler aqui, então vai ser muito massa esse papo, hein? A gente tá recebendo esse ano um dos grandes nomes dos quadrinhos americanos, que a gente sempre quis trazer para a CCXP. Essa é a 11ª edição do evento e a gente corria atrás dele o tempo todo e a gente conseguiu.
Assim, é aquelas pessoas que você vê que vai vir pra cá, você pensa, caramba, esse cara, ele vai estar aqui, carne e osso, ele existe. Loucura.
Pode chamar, galera? Ó, o negócio aqui vai ser massa, hein? Eu quero que vocês façam barulho aqui para receber Chris Claremont, John Romita Jr., Luca Werneck, RB Silva e o Gui Agostini. Família!
Uau, que incrível!
Guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. We can do this in English, right?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for being here. Johnny, welcome back, man.
Obrigado. Muito obrigado.
How's your Portuguese already?
Not as good as last year, but it will get better.
All right. I think that by now you know São Paulo a lot, right?
Yes, very much so. We love the city. Iguazu Falls last year. The most beautiful place I've ever seen in my life.
Wow. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Incredible. So all of Sao Paulo last year, then Iguazu Falls. This year, only Sao Paulo.
And Chris, thank you so much for being here. It's a great honor.
The pleasure is mine.
Yeah, it's such an honor to have you here. Thank you so much. You, both of you. Thank you. And all of you. Thank you.
Obrigado.
Prazer.
It's better that we have all these people around us. Hopefully saying
All
hi.
of my family, tutta famiglia. Oh, Siciliano.
Galera linda e bonita. So maybe next year we'll get a room with walls.
Yeah, we tear down the walls. We had walls. We thought, yeah, we don't need walls. Yeah.
Yeah, but...
All right. A gente tem aqui também, we have here, Gui Agostini. Gui que faz a voz do Mancha Solar.
Prazer estar aqui, uma honra.
Muito bem, olha só, RB Silva também, massa.
Primeira vez aqui, que legal, cara. Valeu.
Primeira vez?
Primeira vez no Neste.
Legal, bacana. E o Lucas Werneck também desenhista da Marvel.
Tudo bem, muito obrigado.
Primeira vez?
Aqui no Palco Omelete, não.
I have to interrupt.
Yeah, right.
They have two people in better condition than I am. I don't like this. Oh!
You have to change your routine.
Maybe this guy over here.
You need to work out together.
I need to work out tonight. Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, all of you guys working in comics, working for Marvel, you're legends of comics. But we wanted to speak to talk a little bit here about X-Men and the impact that your work made in other media, as TV and movies in the screen. I think that our generation here knows X-Men because of the TV series. So we have some videos here to show, to remember people how it was when X-Men debuted on TV back in the 90s, and also with X-Men Evolution. And this year we had X-Men 97. It was a great comeback of these characters on screen. Do you have this clips to show to everyone here? All right, we'll show in a few minutes. I'll start the conversation here. So, Chris, of course, you created some of these characters and some of these stories.
Some?
Yeah, all of them. Yeah, all of the most important of them. Yeah.
You definitely defined
John helped.
a bunch of them.
Yeah, John helped also. We see some of these stories being told over and over again on screen and other media. Why do you think these stories they keep overlasting over the years?
Because they're really, really good. And they had the best source ever. But you know what's even more interesting? In 1988, Stan and I pitched the X-Men to James Cameron. And he almost produced the X-Men. Just imagine.
What would you think it would look like if that happened?
I think there's something that even predates his great work. Stan created the X-Men as what? When he first created the characters? As a minority.
Right. They were all minorities.
This is genius. Jack Kirby did it with the Black Panther, with the X-Men. I think this is genius before the next step of genius. And it all becomes film because that's what comics are. Stop action film. And everybody should know it, including Hollywood 30 years ago, not recent. 45.
Can I ask you something? I think the X-Men are the introduction to that way of thinking for a whole bunch of us, for children, to think socially. And I would like to ask, I mean, Chris, you brought that, you defined that in the comics when it wasn't like hype. It wasn't like, and I'm really curious to know what drove you to do, I mean, X-Men is that for me. It made me see comics and pop culture as a metaphor, good productions, as a metaphor for our lives and our social lives. I'd like to ask, what made you see that? What made you want to do that? Like,
Because I'm an immigrant. I may not look the part,
yeah,
but I'm an immigrant. And my first day at school, I showed up dressed as I'd look going to a British school. And I came home with a black eye and a bloody nose. And because I was the outsider. And everyone said, let's beat the shit out of him. Sorry, didn't mean that word. Being an outsider, for a long time, that wasn't a part of any other superhero comic. It wasn't the FF, it wasn't Captain America, it wasn't Batman, it wasn't even Superman. I mean, he was an outsider,
yeah,
but he grew up in Smallville, so he was like everybody else.
Well, Peter Parker was an outsider. He was a nerd.
But that's why it worked.
This is why Stan and Chris create outsider that becomes superheroes. It's an everyday character. Superman was perfect.
Yeah, there's this amazing comic, Superman Smashes the Klan, that explores that, like he being an immigrant.
But
so
it took,
yeah,
but
so it
with
took
Superman,
a while.
it took 50 years.
Yeah.
This
I
is
mean,
true.
the thing with the X-Men, and especially Magneto, was that they established their outsider status right off the bat. I mean, Stan and Jack, they did it. What the heck? It took a lot more issues after that before that story arc returned to center stage. But the whole point that defined the X-Men and made it different from the FF and the Avengers, hell, what was so outsider about Tony Stark? He's a billionaire. Well, okay, that separates.
Bruce Wayne is Tony Stark. Tony Stark is Bruce Wayne.
Tony Stark looked cool.
One of the characters that you created, that is Sunspot, is done by Guy Agostini. What do you think that defines Roberto da Costa as a Brazilian?
Well, like they've been saying, it's also like feeling this, being a minority, being, an outsider in that world. I love that, the way you guys, described it, because that's really what it is, and Chris creating is specifically, what it's, been going so much for so many years in our culture, racism and all these, this unfortunate social inequalities that we live, but with a very interesting twist, with his father having, that kind of social economics, but also having his mother being, American, and also this like interrelational relationship is very, very interesting.
What did you know about Brazil when you created Sunspot?
Whatever I could find out about it in the National Geographic. We didn't have an internet back then, kids. There weren't even computers that were smaller than this room. I mean, come on, we had to actually do research.
Go to a bookstore or a library. That's how we got reference.
Do they have in the Marvel headquarters a map with all the countries and X-Men from every country? Do you have to check all the countries?
Marvel has a headquarters? DC tore theirs down when they went west. I don't know, Marvel is...
true.
It depends. Artists are a lot more, I would assume, have a lot more necessity for visual references.
Goes without saying, of course.
Writers just grab pieces of paper with well, this is what LA looks like. This is what Montevideo looks like. This is what, forgive me, this is what Brasilia looks like. The Amazon is a magnificent river. But again, 50 years ago, when I was doing the research in National Geographic, you could float all the way up. Now it's changing. And what does that mean? Well, you sit down, you do the research. It's all about research. It's all about thinking.
This is a great segue to the artists. You always had the internet to use as a tool, correct? Not so with me, bookstores, but is it always the internet? Can you look at magazines and newspapers for reference, and life in general as an artist? It's not just printing out. This is the best camera and the best reference, the eyes and the brain.
Absolutely.
Tell us, you must know more than what you get from the internet. You must see more than what you get from the internet. An automobile, for instance, you draw an automobile, not because you print out reference. You see an automobile every single day. The eyes and the brain. It must be this way for a lot of reference for artists.
Did you make a question?
I'm curious.
Yeah, so
I apologize.
Yes, no problem, because I don't speak English very well. So
I apologize.
That's why I have my time to think about your question, and okay, he talk about that. So I have not attention about all your question.
More than the internet, you use visual for reference to draw.
If I use internet for get reference, Yeah, sure, all the time.
More than the internet.
Em comparação,
I'm sorry.
em comparação
Lo
com a
siento.
experiência deles também, porque eles não tiveram essa experiência, eles querem saber em comparação com a experiência deles.
Se usa mais material ao vivo, é isso? Ah, ok.
A gente
No.
pode traduzir se você quiser.
No, if I understood correctly, no, I use the internet all the time. I have no reference in my studio like action figure or statue with muscles or something like that. So for everything I need to do a panel, a background or anything I use a reference, Pinterest or something like that.
But see, the cool thing about the old days when you could pull a piece of paper out of National Geographic is you can imagine what it's like from a different perspective. The disadvantage with looking at a TV screen or a computer screen is that you are limited by what the screen is showing you and how you can perceive it. You can't kind of move it, angle it slightly, and think about what it looks like from behind. You can with certain programs, but again, it's each step forward in the evolutionary structure of technology gives you an advantage but a disadvantage in what you look at and how you can use it.
Yes, that's well said.
And I think that maybe this is a line of work that may be sometimes real lonely, right? Because you have to draw all day, right?
Right, yeah.
The only reason I mention this is because I know how to draw buildings now because of 50 years of drawing buildings. I know how to draw automobiles because of 50 years of drawing automobiles. Clothing, the inside of an apartment, a house, out of sheer repetition without getting printed off the internet. And I assume any artist has the same familiarity with their surroundings. And I think that's as important, if not more important, than the internet, because you remember and you can do it very fast without needing the internet.
Do you want to say something about that? Quer falar alguma coisa sobre isso que eles estão conversando?
I need to answer in English or in Portuguese?
I'm so sorry.
Whatever you feel.
I apologize.
Yeah.
Whatever you feel.
I'm gonna answer in English because I'm talking to you. I think it's easier to find the images and everything, but depends a lot on who's the artist, because I know that we have a lot of apps and tools for building and backgrounds and everything, but for me, I try to draw myself. I always try to construct everything, looking for the images. But so I think the mean change of everything, it's easier to find the images, right? But for some of us, it's still the same kind of process of drawing.
And Chris, of course, you and Johnny, you worked together when you created Forge, and it's a great character that showed up on TV on X-Men 97 and the original series. So everybody here knows about Forge recently because he was on screen. What do you recall from that process of creating this character? It's a long time ago, right?
This is one of the great things about working with him. I was very young and inexperienced. And using his scripts was such an advantage, but at first it was a terrifying challenge, very difficult. But it taught me so many things. And he may not admit it, but he had a film sense in his scripts. And that helped me amazingly. And I can always thank him for that. Even if he doesn't acknowledge me at all, I can always thank him for helping me.
I'm sorry, who are you?
Do you agree with that? Do you agree with this cinematic sense?
Which character are you talking about?
Forge.
Forge?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
That's right, we did that guy.
I don't remember.
He didn't even remember.
Well, but see, the key thing with Forge is writing a thing where he works for the government, so put him in the ugliest clothes ever. So the first time you see him, he's in this what the Dickens t-shirt and a pair of shorts and that's it. You have to figure out an initial grab you image that defines the character right off the bat. Stan and Steve Ditko with original Peter Parker, wham, you see this kid wearing a bow tie and ugly glasses, and the minute you see Aunt May, you know that they are, oh, okay, nobody could be that big a nerd. But he was. And then defining it by this is Mary Jane, and more importantly, this is, oh, for God's sakes, first girlfriend. Gwen. Gwen Stacy. See, my brain's just as bad as yours.
I don't know where you were going with that.
I'm a writer. I can humiliate you all the way. But you try to define everybody as they go, because if you make them real to yourself, hopefully they will become real to the audience out there, but most importantly, real to the artist who has to bring them to life.
This is a great segue for artists, any artist. If you are handed a one-word name to create the character, let's say the writer gives you very little, where do you go? Do you go to fashion magazines? Do you go to other reference to see what is a good image? Where would you go from the first name is handed to you by the writer? Tell me how it would work in your brain to create the visuals.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a difficult question. I don't know. Depend on the name, you know. Is it something like a machine? I will searching something like a machine, Android or something like that. It makes sense if you connect it the name, you know. It's something like a rock or stone. You searching something about that? Yeah, no, yeah.
Much work in the brain.
Yes, exactly.
The same?
Well, I don't draw. I just, you know, I'm an actor. But for me, I think whenever there's descriptions or whatever it is, and like it's always whatever comes to my mind in that first thought that usually is somewhat personal. But then obviously for me now it's all the internet. I go to the internet and I look up images. I do, you know, for whatever references or obviously, you know, background or whatever it is. Or if it's something that I don't know, obviously we got to do the research to know what that means or specifically, you know, the world. But yeah.
Yeah, I like to think first what the character do. Like he's a student. He's work for. He's a police officer. What he's do. For after trying to figure out what his passion. Looking forward in image, you know.
I understand. Chris gives me the premise for Rogue. Almost everything was added to the name, and he let me design it visually. I went to a fashion magazine. I hate to say what year it was, but I look for a fashion magazine, and I love an outfit, boom, visually. Or if Ann Docenti creates a character called Typhoid Mary, I just use my ex-wife.
It's a combination of personal to...
Perfect.
Yeah.
Although Typhoid has a couple of more redeeming qualities than... No. I'm sorry.
And in the beginning, Chris talked about the X-Men being immigrants, how his experience brought that to the comics. And we're in Brazil, and I mean, our experience, I think, is different than in the U.S. And you guys work with people from the U.S. and I mean, you have a different experience maybe than an artist, an American artist. When we talk about X-Men, that it's so much about minorities, and you are minorities in a way, like working for them. How do you personally relate with the X-Men, all of you? I mean.
Can I start it?
Yeah.
Posso responder em português? Acho melhor para todo mundo entender e tal. Quando eu conheci X-Men por X-Men Evolution, assistindo no SBT e tudo mais, da geração lá que assistia. Então, já era um produto muito bem estabelecido, já era um produto que já estabelecido, que falava sobre isso. E aí a minha paixão por X-Men veio por isso. Veio porque eu estava justamente nessa fase de me conhecer, de entender a minha sexualidade, de me sentir excluído do mundo. E aí eu olhei aquele desenho e falei, eles estão falando de mim, eles estão falando... Eu também me sinto assim, de alguma forma. Então, minha paixão veio daí. Então, eu acho que esse é um assunto universal. Não importa qual lugar do mundo você esteja, todo mundo conhece ou já se sentiu assim em algum nível. Então, eu acho que por isso que X-Men continua sendo essa potência, porque esse assunto ainda precisa ser falado, esse assunto ainda precisa ser... As pessoas ainda precisam entender sobre isso. Então, independente de estar aqui no Brasil ou estar lá nos Estados Unidos, faz muito sentido.
Speaking of this side of the X-Men, you and RB worked with Powers of X and House of X, which is really political, and I think that X-Men laid it easily on the political discourse and the political narrative and this kind of debate. What do you feel about working with this new era of X-Men, which is being really well received?
Vou responder em português, que eu acho mais fácil. Cara, X-Men fala sobre isso. Fala sobre políticas, fala sobre igualdade, fala sobre lutas, né? E trabalhar com essa franquia, trabalhar com esse título que tem grande importância, cara, é fantástico. Assim, é sem igual. Eu comecei a ler quadrinhos por causa de X-Men, né? Uncanny X-Men 347, eu nunca esqueço. É minha revista de cabeceira, é minha paixão. E assim como o Lucas também, eu acabei com o tempo consumindo as animações. E, cara, é sobre isso. Não tenho o que falar, não tenho o que acrescentar, sabe? É muito, cara, é fantástico. Sim. Influencia todo mundo, vai continuar influenciando todo mundo. Eu não sinto que caiu em nenhum momento as discussões, as pautas. Elas são, assim, atemporal, sabe? Você tá sempre atualizando sobre o que é a luta, sobre o que é o momento e passando isso para frente. Acho que a X-Men tem isso, cara, tem essa responsabilidade, justamente porque atinge todo mundo, sabe? Não tem... É impossível você ler quadrinhos, impossível você ler X-Men e se sentir excluído.
Sim.
É isso.
Ter começado nessa era de Krakoa foi muito especial. Porque, primeiro, essa reformulação dos X-Men foi incrível. O Hickman mudou a casa, mexeu tudo e foi incrível. E ter começado nessa era ainda fazendo Immortal X-Men, que falava sobre o Conselho. Então, era um quadrinho sobre política. Então, sempre foi muito incrível e os assuntos eram muito deliciosos. Foi um desafio muito grande para mim como artista desenhar isso, porque era praticamente uma edição inteira só de conversas e como deixar isso interessante foi um desafio. Mas eu acho que esse é o ponto dos X-Men, sempre foi. Então, é como desenhar os X-Men na raiz, sabe?
Chris, of course, the movies...
To sum it up a lot, what they said that X-Men, they see themselves in the X-Men. And as minorities, being sexual minority, a racial minority, I sum it up a lot. And the building blocks for that, I believe, you put it there. So
yeah, RB told us that he started drawing because of it.
But see, I have to say,
yeah, it's really loud. It's really loud. It's really
no,
loud.
I mean,
It's really difficult to
I
listen.
think the problem, the challenge is to see themselves at the school as minorities. That's Charlie's job. That's Magneto's job. What they are, well, from my perception, has always been, what they are a half dozen, maybe a dozen kids, young people living together, but looking on themselves as ordinary people. They have abilities, yeah, you know, Leonard Bernstein had abilities. From their perspective, it's not much different. He composed and played brilliant music. They saved the world. You know, A and B. The key is to think of them as people, not as heroes, yes, I am a minority. No. You're a person who's trying to live a normal life. Other people may see you as a minority. You may react to them as a minority. You may look at yourself objectively as a minority, but as a person, you're a person. And Nightcrawler is the most dynamic, non-human physicality in the team. But his attitude is, I'm the person that God made. Who am I to argue with God? I'm just going to live my life like a normal guy and see what happens next. Yes, he hides the way or used to hide the way he looked, because he's not stupid. Blue skin, 2 fingers, 2 toes, and a tail definitely make you stand out from the crowd. It took Logan to challenge him to take off the mask and be a normal person and see if anybody else notices to get him to do it. But other than that, he just tried to live a normal, cool life as someone who loves acting, who's a theater performer, who's a stuntman, whatever. That's the way you should, to me, you should look at these characters, not as characters, not as objective concepts, but as ordinary, normal, really cool people. The rest of it falls into place. But you could look around this room at the people around this table. Oh, look, that's an X person. How do you know? Well, it looks sort of like Colossus. How do you know? Well, doesn't he? I don't know. How do you know? It may be Peter Rasputin, but who knows? You just see him as a person, not as Colossus.
Do you think that the movies got it right about that?
It's a great question.
No comment. I think there may be room for improvement. In some cases, yes. In some cases,
no.
Not so much.
I would like to break this tension, since we have artists here, about film and what we do. I think as creators, we are all directors. We do stop-action film. And I think on top of these beautiful premises of these great characters, maybe right next to it, is the artists telling this story in sequential order. And literally doing it without the need of dialogue, and then the dialogue enhances the project. The greatest challenge is to draw a one complete issue that would make sense without dialogue. When the dialogue is added by people like Chris, you have a film every month. And I think that's what we do.
In roughly 100 still images per issue, 20 pages, 5 to 6 panels a page, unless you're Barry Windsor Smith or George Perez, then it's about 1,000 panels a page. But yes, John's exactly right. We are doing storyboards. And if we get it right, from those storyboards you can make any film imaginable. But you have to get it right.
And suddenly Hollywood is really interested in turning these storyboards into movies and series. How did you react in your day-to-day job back in the early 90s when it became real popular? The stories that you told before became real popular on screen. How did it affect the work that you do every day?
It didn't change anything for me, because I knew what I wanted to do before this happened. And that was to tell the story. My art was only okay. There were so many better artists in the industry. They're everywhere. But I am good at telling a story, sequential storytelling. and that makes the artwork look better. And so I did not change when film came up alongside comics. This is what we knew going in. This should have happened 50 years ago. Hollywood should have grabbed every creator in comics and said, I want all of your ideas. These are brilliant. Why did it take so long?
But like all editors, producers go to the people they know. So what you have is storytelling on the left coast, the West Coast, done by people on the West Coast. We're on the East Coast for the most part, so we do what we do, they do what they do. They rarely intersect because, you know, because we're on different coasts.
It's just very simple. The creators in this business can all direct a movie. Every single one of us, even if it's just a writer, without the visual ability. You get an assistant director who is a technical wizard, so to speak, and you direct a film. I know you can direct a film. I know you can. You have the creative mind. What annoys me is how long it took. And I know the public knew this. I know you all knew this. You read these books for years, and you read them as stop-action film. Why did it take so long? Because people are still stupid, even though they're very wealthy.
But see, that last word is where it fits. Because in a 20-page comic book, you get a complete TV episode. But it only costs $25,000. For $25,000, you can't even get a coffee for a movie star. 25 million, you're on. So we're too cheap. You know?
But you add the quality of these characters with this brilliant background of these characters, politically, emotionally. This is charged with everything in the news today. And you add the brilliance of the visuals, this is a film. And every single issue is a film.
Guys, while you were talking, first of all, thank you so much for being here. And while you were talking, we had Edu drawing the X-Men over here. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at that. All right.
I love it.
This is Omelete's mascot. Draw has Cyclops. Is that it? And also Wolverine. All right.
Wolverine.
Cool. That's cool. That's real cool.
Do you want dialogue?
Bravo, bravo.
Yeah, Chris Gunn's right, the dialogue. Guys, thank you so much for being here. It was great having you here.
Thank you.
Kim Agostini, Chris Claremont, John Romita Jr.,
Valeu, galera.
RB Silva e Lucas Werneck.
Obrigado.